saw you doing that. Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend, Dr. Scott Taylor. Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm well, Kathy. How are you? Thank you.
Good, good. Well, that was a little sweaty getting started, but here we go.
We're laughing because Kathy caught me during the intro music. I was doing a little dance thing there, and oops, she wasn't supposed to see that.
Yeah, you have no idea what I can tell. Plus, I am psychic anyway, psychic and intuitive, so I can see stuff. So anyway, and I'm weird that I'm actually claiming it now. I hit it just like the near-death experiencers. They hide things forever, right?
Yeah. For me, it was over 15 years before I really told anybody about my shared near-death experience. Yeah, it's a profound shift in who you are and how you present yourself to the universe. So yeah, the fact that you're claiming it now, you get extra points from me.
Well, I'm too weird. I can't not. I mean, it's because okay, so I'll back up. Scott and I met because we're both really, really enthusiastic supporters of IONS, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And my interest is, I have not, that I know of, had a near-death experience, but I've had a spiritually transformative experience. But Scott was even on the board of IONS 2 times.
2 times.
Oh my God!
I know.
That's a big commitment. It's a big commitment. Bless you. Bless you. So anyway, but Scott is also a retired gentleman who couldn't really retire, so he started something else. But he was the executive director of the Monroe Institute, which I can't wait. Will you mentor me? I want to learn everything about all that.
We can do that. Not a problem.
Okay, it's on recording now. No, I just love I have so much of their stuff. I had no idea you were connected. So okay, let's go back to near-death experience. When we're talking about our enthusiasm for all of this, it's because there's this feeling around these beautiful people that have had an experience. They've been open to the divine. They may not have the words, like I didn't have the words for anything, but the sense of how they walk in the world with this open heart is different. So how did you had a very unique near-death experience. So please tell your story. I just wanted to preface it so people understood.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Okay.
I was in love with a beautiful young woman. Her name was Mary Frances Randall, and she and her son Nolan were in a horrific car accident. And Mary Fran, she was killed outright. And Nolan had a significant head injury, and they wound up taking him to Mayo in Rochester, Minnesota, to see if he could, just to take care of him, I guess.
Yeah.
And it took him about 6 days to make his transition.
Oh.
And during that time, Nolan was the oldest grandchild in a family of 9 kids.
Wow.
Yeah, right. So yeah, Mary Fran was number 3 of 9. And so that meant that there was lots of chance for people to come and be there to support Nolan. And I mention that because when it came to be the 6th day after the accident, Mary Fran's oldest sister and I were we had a shift where we were taking care of him. And, sitting bedside and telling him stories and describing what it was like in the waiting room with 40 people designed for 10,
Wow.
and, just in general, trying to, just keep talking to him. Now, he was in a coma, but we all know that, hearing is the last sense to go. So it was important that we keep him kind of what's going on and what his treatment was and that sort of thing. Anyway, so Janny and I had the 3 to 5 o'clock shift in the morning, and we were in there and we were telling him stories. And Janny was an ER nurse, and at the end of the shift, this is back in the day when they had the clipboard at the end of the bed.
Yeah.
She picked up the clipboard and took a look at it, and she looked at the monitors and she looked at the clipboard again, and she just shook her head and said, "It's time." So we sat down next to Nolan and told him that he'd been an incredibly brave boy and that he was trying really hard to be there for us and to stay with us. And his vital signs were such that Janny could see where it was going. And she said, "Nolan, you've been an incredibly brave boy. And if your mother comes," now remember, she died 6 days before.
Wow.
But she says, "If your mother comes to pick you up, please go with her. And know that we love you and that we want the best for you and your mom." And so that was the end of our shift, and we left and we went into this room where there's people sleeping higgledy-piggledy all over. Well, it was about 45 minutes later, the nurse came in and told this whole big group of us that it was time to do the vigil. And so we went into the hospital room, and all of us gathered around the bed. And as it turns out, I was one of the last people in the room.
Wow.
And so, it was already 3 and 4 deep around his bed. And so I just wound up sitting on the windowsill next to Mary Fran's youngest brother, Willie. And you could just watch the vital signs go down. And then when the heart rate monitor goes flat, it makes that ominous sound.
Yeah.
And when it went flat, what I experienced was Mary Fran crossing the veil and scooping up her child out of his physical body. And somehow I was privy to that reunion, and it was just exquisite, as you can only imagine, between a mother and child. So I just kind of was taken aback by that, but just was witnessing this incredible reunion between Mary Fran and Nolan. And then, to my surprise, the two of them turned to me, came and embraced me, and then the three of us went to the light. And I got to be with them in the light, and we got to be together. And this is all nonverbal now, but we had a chance to be together, say goodbye, and at some point, the two of them turned and left and went further into the light, and I came back to my physical body. And what makes this even more strange is that I was fully present in the room with all of the grieving relatives, and I was with them in the light. So I had bilocated. I had two separate consciousnesses that were working at the same time.
Oh, cool.
And and I know that to be true because as I'm sitting there in the room, what I'm witnessing is everybody else grieving. And, they just lost their nephew, their cousin, their grandson, and they're holding on to each other and crying on each other's shoulders. And I'm sitting on the windowsill, and I'm in this state of ecstasy, this state of I'm connected to the most amazing love of the universe. And I have enough self-awareness to know that I am completely inappropriate for the room. That if anybody were to look at me, they, so I wound up just, covering my face with my hands so that I could be not a disruption to the room, but also it helped me just to be with Mary, Fran, and Nolan, which is, where I was at this time. And, then when I came back, I really just, it was like both part of me came back together again. And I had one consciousness that was residing within this physical body. And so, yeah, so that is, I now know, a shared near-death experience, or some people call them an empathetic near-death experience or a shared death experience. All of these titles have the same thing. But the idea is that, when you're bedside and you care deeply about the person who's making their transition, that at times you leave and go with them, and you get to experience what they experience. Now, for me, it was just being in the light. I now know, after all of my research, that EDD part there says I spent 7 years of my life getting my doctorate at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul. And my dissertation was on persons that had near-death experiences.
Perfect.
And so I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people who've had near-death experiences, and a fair number have had shared near-death experiences. And so it takes a while to kind of get the sense of what that means. And in particular, I had a shared near-death experience. I'm also bilocating, and I come from a small town in southern Minnesota, Presbyterian tradition, and it just isn't part of the lexicon of the Presbyterian Church. Is all of these different states, and what I learned from PMH Atwater a long time ago was that there are different kinds of light that people encounter in a near-death experience. The most common one, the ones you see on TV all the time, is the white light at the end of the tunnel. And that is the vast majority of near-death experiencers. But some people have a black light experience,
right? Where
they go into a black light and it's loving, it's the source of all being. And a clear light experience. And that's what mine was. Was a clear light experience. There aren't very many of those. And what a clear light experience means is that what you realize is that everything in the universe exists of energy, that everything is the love of the universe, that we are just individuated bits of this incredibly complicated web. And so for me, it was more of a merging into this experience. It was, I realized that state of bliss is just this far from where we all are.
Exactly.
It's just a little bit different vibration, and you can enter into it and you are it. And, and so is the table in this microphone. And I mean, it's all the same stuff. And you have, it's a unity experience merged with a light experience. It's quite significant. So anyway, that's my tale, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. So you have this experience, and you have up until this point, you've never had an out-of-body experience. You were your concepts of spirituality was traditional Western.
Yeah, mainline Presbyterian. Yeah, you got it.
And then you have this experience, and did you tell anybody about it? Or what did you do? Yeah, see, that's what I find fascinating about talking to people. I mean, I've talked to several people. They didn't tell anybody for 30 years.
I got a guy who it was over 50 that I interviewed for my dissertation.
Uh-huh.
And the two of us, you'll love this. We're sitting in a Denny's and I'm interviewing him. And so it goes on for a while. And then after a little bit, his wife walks in and he turns to her and he's just like so rude. He's like, like, Mabel, get out of here. I got to finish talking to Scott. And I looked at him and said, what was that about? And he goes, oh, I haven't told her. And they've been married over 50 years. So, yeah, I said, would you please tell her when you go home? Because you're going to be sleeping on the couch after that.
Well, especially because most of the people especially when after they re-experience their experience, they're so loving. I mean, they went home. They went home and their hearts busted wide open. So for him to be crabbing at her is kind of
Well, it was a secret that he had held so tightly. And for him, it happened in the 20s. And he was on a crew with the 30s. It was part of the CCC project and the Conservation Corps that took place during the Depression.
Oh, okay.
And he was on a work car on a railroad train, and he fell off, and the train ran over his leg, and
oh my God!
And so he bled out, and they saved him. But in that time period, you didn't talk about this stuff, and we know about near-death experiences that the first disclosure that you make is critically important to how much you will share with other people. And so that's and for him, it was safe with me. And, and for me, I wound up writing about it in my dissertation, and then I shared it with my parents. And I'll never forget my dad's reaction. He's like, well, yeah, this is the stuff I believe about the universe. It's like, really? You never talked about this? I mean, I could have just said this a long time ago. Yeah. Okay.
Well, do you find that you reflect on it every day?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I find too.
It's a significant part of who I am. And we know from the research that the difference between a near-death experience and a STE is that near-death experiencers become more clear. It's like you peel away the onion. It becomes more complicated. You understand more, and it becomes more a central part of your life. STEs, on the other hand, tend to degrade over time. The memory of them do. Well, maybe you touched the light, dear.
I'm an anomaly. It's all right.
And it becomes less important. The details go away.
Wow.
And so the dividing line seems to be if you touch the light, and it can be that quick. So whether it's white, clear, or black, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference how long it was. We now know that you judge whether or not you had a near-death experience based on the after effects. It isn't what happened during the event itself. I've talked to tons of people that had just the briefest of experiences with the light, but they're like poster children for the after effects. It's like 17 different kinds of after effects, and like, Okay, you got all of them except number 14.
Can you share? Can you share that? Because what I love about this group is so many of the people got their superpowers.
Yeah.
They did, but I feel like I already had my superpowers. It just put things into perspective, but I didn't have the terminology, and that's
Yep.
why I love hearing stories and meeting people that are part of this, because it is giving me words where I had none.
And boy, isn't that an important thing? It wasn't until I started doing my work on my dissertation and reading extensively the literature that I began to have words. And even then, I was studying near-death experiences, but I didn't know I had one.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't until I was about halfway through my literature search, and there's this skinny little book, which is odd for PMH Atwater. There was this skinny little book, and I found it in a funky bookstore in Portland, Oregon. And I walked over to the shelf and I opened it up, and there in chapter 17 was one paragraph that said, sometimes when people are bedside with those that are making their transition and there is an emotional connection between the two of them, the person who's the witness goes to the light with the person making their transition. And that's known as a shared near-death experience, right, or an empathetic near-death experience. And I read that and I went, oh my God, I had no idea that was, part of the canon. But, back when I was doing my research, that was about the only reference I could find to it. Since then, there's been a lot more.
I have one question before you go over the 17, which I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, sorry. But do you still have contact? Can you still connect to them?
Oh, yeah. I have Nolan, who had just turned 7. So he and I, ever since he made his transition, he's been my buddy. I have contact with him all the time. In fact, he's like right there. He is around all the time. And it's really interesting, Kathy, because, when I go into a meditative state, and we have a park bench that the two of us meet on, and sometimes he'll show up like he's 7. Sometimes he'll show up as a young man, because he'd be 47 years old now.
Wow.
And sometimes he's age appropriate, but it all depends upon what it is that he's working on. And probably the story that just blows me away about Nolan and I is that we go to the bench and we sit down, and he's presenting himself as a young man, probably in his early 30s, and he's dressed like Men in Black. He's got the black suit with the skinny lapels and the skinny tie and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what I get from that is that he is presenting to me from another lifetime. And so we sit down, and he says, Scott, there's something I want to talk to you about. And I said, sure. So he opens up his briefcase, and in the briefcase there's a gun and a bunch of papers, but there's a pistol in there. And he tells me that he is something like a U.S. Marshal, some sort of thing like that. And he had just had to kill his first person in the line of duty. And he was torn up with that.
Yeah.
And Nolan's taken to calling me Dad. So he said, Dad, I need to talk about it. So we have, excuse me. we have this conversation about what that means and how you um, deal with that kind of trauma in your life when you consider yourself a good person and you wind up having to kill somebody.
Right.
It just, he was hoping to never have to use it. And anyway, so we had this conversation, and what it opened up for me, not only was our relationship deepened, but this idea of time and space and
Yeah.
how all of our lives are intertwined with each other. And that life that Nolan's living in the 1950s is informing me here in 2021. And so, what we think about in terms of how the universe is organized and how it's connected, um, it's it's much bigger and more complex than we could possibly ever imagine. And so we've been great friends for 40 years. The accident happened in July of 81. So it really is, it's the 40th anniversary.
Wow.
Just about a month ago. And Mary Fran and I have a relationship, but it's been really sporadic. She'll show up for a while, and then it's like, I got stuff to do. So, she'll disappear for years. And she's like not around. And it's happened enough times now that, it's like, it's all good.
Yeah.
And again, she does the same thing. She is starting to present herself as different ages, depending upon what it is that we want to talk about. And anyway, so yeah, we're still there, which then leads to, well, if I can talk to Mary Fran and Nolan, how about my deceased grandparents and my mentor at University of St. Thomas and all these other people who have made their transition? It just opened up the whole world. And you're going, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Okay. But it was the meditative techniques that I learned at Monroe that allowed me to do that.
I see. Okay. So basically so when did you start with Monroe? Did you start with them like 20 years after your experience?
No.
Right away?
Well, another thing I should say that we know about people who've had near-death experiences is whether they know it or not, they become intensely curious. And now I'm putting words into my brain that weren't there then. Okay. But what happened for me was that I had this profound curiosity about that experience that I had. And I knew if I had done it once, I could do it again.
Right.
And so, I traveled all over the world. I went to see if I could find vestiges of that energy, in a place. So I went to the Sphinx and the Stonehenge and the Oracle of Delphi. And, I studied with shamans in Japan and in South America and North America. I did TM. I went to seminary. I did all of this stuff. And then a friend of mine turned me on to the Monroe Institute and their very particular way of meditating. And boom, the world just opened up for me. And I was able to touch that space again. I was able, my first contact was with Mary Fran and then my deceased grandfather, then Nolan. And, it's like, oh, because what they do is teach you how to enter into expanded states of awareness and hold it, because that's the main problem, is that people enter into these and it's just way too fast. And then so you can enter into it, hold it, and then they teach you the techniques for how to navigate in the non-physical universe. And so it's both things. You get to experience it, hold it, and know what to do when you're there. It's one of the problems people have with near-death experiences is they're thrust into this environment. They have no idea what it's about.
Right.
And, and then what do you do with it? And then it's over.
Yeah.
And anyway, and so what Monroe taught me was how to realize that is natural and that we all have that inside of us. And there's just a couple things you need to learn, and poof, off you go.
Right. Right.
And that was sorry, commercial here. That was the foundation of my company.
Right. Oh, keep going with the commercial because I want to know all about your company. No,
Okay.
well,
So
this makes total sense that you had a fascination. Well, you had the experience and you had a fascination about it all. Then you realized that your experience was the fascination, which it could have been. You could have gone through the ET. You could have gone through all sorts of different ways to get where you got, because it's so. It's about the human is so capable of so much more expanded consciousness and to co-create with the universe at a higher level than we've been trained, than our parents taught us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I was, I had been a trainer at the Monroe Institute. Well, so I took my first course a couple years afterwards in 1983. And then I took took a whole series of them because it was like, wow, this is great.
Yes.
And then I became a trainer for them 2 years later in 85 and have been training for them ever since.
Wow.
And it was about, hang on, 2013, 8 years ago, that I said to myself, I'm training people how to navigate the non-physical universe using the Monroe techniques and using the Monroe cosmology. Cosmology just means, how the world is organized. So Bob Monroe did a whole bunch of things about out-of-body experiences and how to do that and where you can go and the techniques you can use. And it's really effective and it's wonderful. So I said, he's trained probably 30,000 people have gone through that institute. There had millions of people have had near-death experiences.
Right.
So what if we could adapt the Monroe techniques and the tools and explore it like near-death experiencers explore it, and use that cosmology and not the one from Monroe, but just use the one that's already been established by these millions of people that have had near-death experiences.
Cool.
So that's what I did. It took me a long time to figure it out, but yeah, we adapted. Monroe uses a binaural beat sound technology, and so I worked with the sound engineer. And we tweaked it so that the vibrations that you are hearing are close to the vibrations of the lights I was talking about.
Wow.
So there is a particular vibration of the tunnel, for instance. And so we can, through use of audio technology, put you into that state, and it's very easy then to explore the tunnel. And we can do the same thing with white light, with black light, with clear light. Each of those have a different kind of experience associated with them, as they each have a different vibrational state. Each of those lights is slightly different from each other. But the cool thing is there's one vibration that is identical to the system in Bob's world, and it's called the park. It's that area of life between lives.
Okay.
And in near-death literature, it's called the park. And in Monroe literature, it's called the park.
Wow.
And so the two systems meet. Well, as you would expect. I mean, you're exploring the same places, and it just so happens that one intersect, and it's a incredibly well, it's the life area between lives. So there's all kinds of things. The Akashic records are there. All the learning centers are there. The Healing and Regeneration Center, the Reception Center. It just goes on and on and on. So it's a place that's been visited by many people over millennia, and it now has a name. And so anyway, that's what we do. So we've got different vibrations that allow people to then enter into, and say, like, white light is really good for doing a past life review. So put you into that vibration, give you a little guidance on what to do, what to look for, who's going to help you, and then off you go. So that's what my business is all about. It's about helping people who are curious about the near-death experience, and either from a couple of standpoints. They had one and they want to go back there again, or they've heard a speech or two, right? And they get done with it listening to, Eben Alexander, or, or Johnny, or, all of these people, right? And after you hear them, you go, I want me some of that. Well, and we get those people, and they say, I believe I can do that. And then there's people who come and say, my father, my sister, my husband, my whatever had one, and I need to understand it, because
that's beautiful.
Because they have changed so much, because they've had their heart opened, and they've, their outlook on the world is so different. I need to be in the same place. I need to understand that.
Perfect.
And so that's the people who come. They're curious about NDE in some form, and we take away that fear of death, that fear of the unknown, of what transition might look like. And then we replace it with, here you go. You can have, when we do our workshops, we probably make that transition about 25 times. And at the end of the week, you know exactly what's going to go on. When you lift out of your body, who's the guide that's going to help you take it to the light. And then as you're going through the tunnel, stop, enjoy the tunnel. It's pretty cool. And, and you set up the reunion party with the dead relatives and make that all happen. And,
wow.
who's this teacher protector that's going to take you to the life review, and how are they counseling you to do that? Light beings and cities of light and the realm of knowledge, all of that is available. And the cool thing is that it's not associated with trauma.
Right.
'Cause let's face it, the vast majority of people who have near-death experiences, it's because their physical body is in so much trauma that it dies.
Right.
And that, and that carries with it a huge burden, because you've got to get yourself healthy again. But there's all of the pain is associated with that. And then when you come back and you're a changed person, well, do you fit back into the culture that you left?
Right.
And the answer is probably no. And, the other thing is like what happened with me is that many of these instances of where near-death experiences happen, where they were instigated by that, by a certain event, other loved ones died at the same time. And you hear that over and over again, car crashes and there's only one person that survived, or the other people died, or just other really horrific things that happen to families and to, family units. It's just, we don't need that.
Right.
And we don't want that. And there's a huge burden that comes with that. And if we can learn how to enter into these states gently, with an expectation of I know what's going to happen, And I know once I'm there what to do and how to ask questions and how to manipulate the situation so that we get out of it what we need.
Right, right.
You know, and there's a whole thing about how do you work with guides? They're incredibly helpful as you navigate these spaces. And, you know, it's like having a new best friend.
Yes. Yeah.
and you know, you got to kind of learn what you each are good for. And anyway, so that's the fun of it.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow, I had no idea it was so. I was interested in the Monroe stuff back in the 80s, I think, 80s and 90s, because I was interested in accelerated learning. Oh. And I was studying everything I could. I ran my own business. It was $1 million business. I was trying to figure out how to supercharge everything. And then later on, I ended up running a division at Arthur Andersen with 80 employees. And I was listening to this stuff, just focus music and centering music, because a lot of times we were in an open environment. You didn't necessarily have four walls around you. And
really important.
So I started really going deep on and buying everything I could, because you could tell that sound and frequency was the key. And I believe the Russians really figured it out in the 80s because of the Cold War. They had figured out how to learn other languages and be better spies, the accelerated learning side of it. So that's how I got really interested in it. And I have to say, I still listen to all this stuff. If I need to focus, I've got stuff on frequency music, because that altered state, there's nothing like it. It does something with how you perceive.
Yeah, well, I had exactly the same thing when I was doing my doctoral work. You know, you got to read a ton of stuff and retain it.
Yeah.
And so I would take and throw one of those meta musics in the background. My favorite was Remembrance. And it helped you focus and retain. Well, one of the reasons it works so well is that, you know, binaural beats have as a consequence, because they're different different frequencies go into different ears. So like if you're 100 hertz in one ear and 104 hertz in the other ear, what the brain does is it sets up a third tone, which is the difference between the two, which would be 4. And the way that it does that is it sends signals from one, trying to do this backwards on the screen. Here we go. From one hemisphere to the other, right? And it's going back and forth and back and forth. And it's trying to equalize them because that's what we do naturally. That's how we locate in space is, you know, sound differentials. But as a result of the signals being sent back and forth really rapidly, both hemispheres of the brain now start to work together. So instead of a left and right, it's a whole. Yep. And all of a sudden you've got the linear and the abstract working together to solve a problem. And all you had to do is to throw on an exercise on your boombox or on your phone or whatever. And it just opens up the creativity that's possible. It's a remarkable thing. And, you know, as every chance I get, I just go get yourself one. They're $20. Come on.
I use it every day, and I've been using it every day for 30 some years because it's the way that I can be really productive and do time, use the time in time slots. So I don't know how people do without it. I really
Microsoft solitaire for you.
No, actually, no, because that's, I think once you've had these experiences of seeing how little of your consciousness is really in this physical body, and that you can access the field that is you and your higher consciousness, why not play with that? And so whatever helps me access that, that's where you put the alchemy into everything.
Yep.
Yep.
I love that description. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I thought that's what I got that memo. I thought that's what so Scott, yeah, we're going to have to do more than one of these conversations, I can see. But what I'd like to do is have us talk a little bit about the IONS conference.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, because I do want to. Although, but first, let's talk about your NDE meditations site. Do you want to share a little bit about that, and then we'll go to IONS?
Oh, sure. I can do the commercial quickly.
Okay.
So on the site, it explains what we've been talking about what near-death experiencers are and what impact they have on us and why they are the way they are. And there are two types of products that we have on that site. The first ones that I did were these. Whoops. Yeah. These guys. Here we go.
Oh, I have those too.
Well, you should recognize my voice then. So I authored.
Put it all together into, oh my goodness. I'm a junkie. I'm really a groupie.
So go back to those because they got the special sauce on the frequencies. So
okay, I have to
very special.
I have to go find them. Yep, I will.
Yep. So I created 6 guided try that again. Guided visualizations are really helpful in doing this kind of work. So you know what to do and where to go. And so it's kind of like taking parts of my workshop and just, getting the key things. And so there's one where, in fact, this first one, it's still one of my favorites, and it's one of the best-selling CDs at HemiSync they've ever had.
Yep, I've got it.
So this one is cool because it's what we've been talking about. The first exercise on here is reunion. So it's about how do you go and talk to the dead relatives and be a reunion with them. And the second one's a life review. The third one is the Cities of Light. That's up in the park.
Yeah.
So you get to mess around in there for a long time. And then the third one is a reminder that all information is part of all other information. So this realm of knowledge, we put you into that state so that everything is available to you. So that's kind of cool. And so I've got one on that's like, how do you meet your guides? How do you explore the tunnel? How do you go back to source? What was it before we became human? What were things back before they were physical? That is just my favorite spot of ever.
Yeah.
It's the black light. It's cool. And then free flow meditations. So this guy right here.
Okay.
So what happens is these are guided meditations. And after you've done them about 3-4 times, you go, yeah, Taylor, I know. Don't tell me to take that left turn there again. What if I want to go right? And that's what this one's all about. This is the same frequencies, but without the talk.
Oh.
So these are the free flow meditations. And boy, I had so much clamoring for like, we love you, Taylor, but shut up. Like, Okay.
I
Heard
got
it.
I got it. I got it. Well,
Heard
it
it loud
makes
and
sense
clear.
too. It makes sense too that the once you get into the field and you're comfortable there, you may want to explore it by
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other product that is on the site is my 5.5 day workshop. And, originally when it was created, it was designed to be in person.
Uh-huh.
But when I was heading up Monroe, the pandemic hit and we had to shift everything over into Zoom workshops.
Right.
And we were kind of worried about that. Is that going to work? Is it not going to work? Fabulous. It worked great. Remember that whole thing we said about time and space doesn't really exist?
Right.
It's true. Because when people all over the globe, I mean, we had workshops where we had 6 continents represented.
Right.
And people
Cool.
would have shared experiences, Australia to Japan to the US. And anyway,
Isn't that cool?
so we're offering in late September, we'll have a week-long workshop, and it'll be via Zoom. And in there, we really march you through the whole process about all the different common elements that are in an NDE. We address, and we say, okay, let's go explore this. What is it like to be in the tunnel, and what does that have to tell us? And how do we learn to manipulate energy in the tunnel so you get more information out of why was it created and just for you? Anyway,
Cool. Very
yeah, cool. So that's the 2 things. It's we have the albums and we have the 5.5 day workshop.
Well, I have to say that in my experience, because I work with a lot of energy healers, magnificent energy healers,
Yeah,
I think that a lot of times the electronic delivery can amplify the
really, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, you can infuse more energy into it, so it can be more powerful than in person. So
I'm going to put that in my marketing materials.
yeah,
Good.
it's your intention. It's like the observer effect in quantum physics.
Yep,
It's
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's all about intention.
Yep.
And that's why it doesn't really make much difference. Well, that's not true, but like when we put on the headphones and there's a particular vibration, if you go there and then you say, whoa, gee, I wish I could talk to, Grandpa Brett. Well, that's a different vibration than the one you're in, but it doesn't make any difference. It's like you've already gone through the major portal and then it's just like a half a turn to the left and you're there. So it's
because it's frequency.
It's frequency, and you are in charge of the frequency. You dial it up, you dial it down.
That's right. That's right. But we don't even know. We're like in training wheels. We don't even know that we're have these powers. That's what I was trying to refer to before, is that this whole time period since the lockdown, I think a lot of people are waking up to this, the potential to co-create with the universe at a much higher level, which means that you get out of the box. The boxes are gone energetically. They're gone if you are brave enough to believe that and experiment with it. So
one of the things that I discovered during this lockdown was, and it's not, I learned it from another teacher, so this isn't new. I mean, I didn't come up with this, but in terms of manifesting, so we put out an affirmation that, I want this to happen, or I want this energetic thing to not happen, or whatever it is that we're declaring is the truth. And then we end up afterwards by saying, I want to get this right, even if I don't believe it.
Perfect.
It's incredible. Kathy, I cannot tell you, because then the mind doesn't get in the way anymore. It says, okay, this is Scott's, intention is to, change this relationship, even if he doesn't believe it.
That's perfect.
And so it's like, okay, it like gets around all of that ego stuff, and it gives the brain or our spirit permission to just do it anyway, even if you don't believe it. Taylor, all right.
Yeah.
You don't believe it? We're still going to make it happen because you said so.
There's another thing by this woman, Azara Lovejoy, called The One Command. And it says, I don't know how, I only know that I want this or that to happen. And so it is. And it's because I don't know how. You've already claimed, I don't know how, but I want this. And then it's amazing too.
Yeah. It's kind of a variation of that theme.
Exactly. Even if I don't believe it.
Even
Cool.
if I don't believe it.
Well, so there's so many. We're co-creating with the universe at every level, creating this reality for ourselves. So you don't like it, you can co-create something different. It's a good idea. Okay. So now I'm going to see if this works. Hold on a second.
Oh, look at that.
It didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. Darn it. I was trying to put it so that we are on the left.
Well, you're fiddling with that. How about I do a little commercial?
That's what I was trying to do nah, that didn't work. Okay, so back to that. What I was trying to do is I was trying to show the IONS 40th anniversary.
It's a poster. Yeah, it's a great digital poster.
Yes.
That is available at virtualconference.ions.org. Oh, there it is with the Chiron on the bottom of the thing. That's great.
Yeah.
And it's easy to remember. virtualconference.ions.org. And all these details are available there. It's just wonderful. And when people go, they will go, geez, look at those headliners. Those are the keynote speakers. There's some big names.
Yes.
And, we've got.
BMH, you said.
Yeah.
Do you want me to help you with the names?
No, I got them here. I just got here we go. I have a cheat sheet. I have a cheat sheet right here. We got Bruce Grayson and Karen Newell and Mark Anthony and Nancy Rhines and Oscar Miro Casada. And it's the 10th anniversary of Evan Alexander's first talk that he gave to IONS. Yep. And we're so lucky we have him back, and he's going to tell us about the new things that he's thought about in the last decade. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what our old friend has to say. Oops, sorry, Evan, didn't mean to call you old. Let's try that again. Our dear friend, how about that? And then we've got 100 speakers, 100, on this huge array of topics that I think people will just be like giddy over, and they're going, oh my gosh, I don't know how I can choose. Well, you don't have to. I mean, you can go and attend in the breakout sessions, because I think there's 4 rooms at each time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fine. But your ticket allows you 90 days, and you can go visit the other ones.
Right.
So you don't have to miss anything. Don't feel guilty. It's just come on. And the cool thing, I think, about IONS conferences is that once people go, they go, I'm home.
Yeah.
This is home. This is my tribe right here.
Yep.
And they're compassionate and loving and non-judgmental. And boy, does that make a difference when you start to open up and say, well, this weird thing happened to me, or I don't understand what you're telling me. Explain that to me in other words. We know that drill, right? Because it's having the right words is sometimes really difficult.
Impossible at first. I think so. So for the people that are listening to this, I had like a insatiable curiosity about it. I have no idea why, but I had also had an insatiable curiosity about the about reincarnation, all the way from college on. So this whole thing of what else is there besides this, and how can I access that and bring more of it into here? If you want that kind of information, these people, when they speak, you get so much access to your highest knowing, your own capacity to co-create here, your own capacity to love, your own capacity to be part of this huge change we're in, because we can't go from that old model of being highly competitive and aggressive, which is what our past history is. We want to go to this new history that is loving and co-creative and expansive.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these people, they have clues. I mean, PMH Atwater, she doesn't even know she's telling you stuff, and she's telling you stuff, and she's giggling. And a lot of these people are actually gleeful. Really?
Oh, I love PMH, and you're
Yeah.
right. She's often a guest speaker in my 5.5-day course.
Oh, really?
And and so we're talking about a different aspect of, and and she just knows so much stuff. You want to talk about kids? Let's talk about kids. You want to talk about After Effects? Let's talk about After Effects. And and she can go on for hours on all of them. And you're absolutely right, Kathy. When you're listening to these speakers, you go, "What did he just say? You can do what? This happened. That means that this can happen and that can happen." And
That's right.
you start to go down that rabbit hole, and all of a sudden you realize we are more than our physical bodies, and we are much more than that.
And yay. Well, no, I mean, I think that's what this whole shutdown time and this whole expansiveness, we're going into a new era of humanity that's conscious, where you make choices to listen to, but you listen to your recordings and make choices to read the stuff that isn't oppressive and sad and difficult. It gives you possibilities that your imagination is what you create with. And we've been kind of shut down. We've been following these rules that are a construct that may not serve for our kids and grandkids and going forwards. And this conference has 100 speakers that could, one of them could make a life-changing thing for you, but 100 of them. And if you don't want to watch Netflix and you watch the 90 days and you do catch something, you can go back and listen to it again. It's such a gift.
It is such a gift. Yep. And people have a good time at these things. Just have fun while you're learning about all of this that is so important about our self-concept, who we are in the physical world, and then who we are in the non-physical world.
That's right. And we're not alone. That was the theme last year, was you don't die alone because of the beginning of the virus. But now what you've got is you've got people that this is the next step to self-awareness, I think. I'm excited.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm so excited about this. I'm doing all sorts of stuff behind the scenes as a volunteer, but you're the MC. You're the dude.
Well, can I tell you a quick story about that?
Of course.
So I'm back on the board, many moons ago, and I've attended a whole bunch of conferences, and they're pretty good.
Yeah,
they're pretty good. And but I kept noticing that you put a room and fill it with all kinds of near-death experiencers. It's like chasing cats, and so I was noticing, he said, whoever is the MC kind of needs a gimmick or something. So the things move along the way they should. So everybody's time is respected. And then oddly enough, I had that thought, and not too long afterwards, I got asked. I said, yeah, would you like to do that? Now, here's what you need to know about me is that when I turned 60, it was traumatic.
Oh,
And yeah, so I really felt like I needed to do something special. So what I chose to do is to wear a kilt every day for a year. And that was the year that I was in charge of.
I was there.
And so what I found out, what I thought would be true, actually was true, which is when I walk up on, on the stage, everybody goes silent and they're looking at you like, why is this guy in a skirt? And it was really easy. And I would just say, welcome everybody. And then this joke just came out of my mouth it's so bad. It's a dad joke. It says, I can see that you're all looking at me and you're wondering why I'm dressed in Scottish regalia. Well, it's because in my research, I had to talk to hundreds and hundreds of people who had near-death experiences. They were killed and brought back to life again.
No, that's horrible.
That's horrible, but it set the tone.
I don't remember you saying that
for the conference.
I think I would remember. Oh, that's great.
Okay, everybody, you now have permission to have a good time at this conference.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think everyone will, and I hope that they'll take advantage of your sense of humor to get them ready to be in a it's entertaining while it's expansive mode. That's what this isn't like. You had to get your doctorate. We're not talking about that. We're talking about
you don't need to do that.
No. Well, it's almost like getting that without even to read all those books. When you start hearing all these stories, and I mean, a lot of the speakers have books. When you start hearing their stories, you get to see which book you want to read, and you get to see who you go, wow, you can tell they've got superpowers. You can see who got the memo. You really, and feel it. Well, a lot of people got the heart open memo. A lot of people got the got to get something done memo.
Well, one of the cool things in Ken Ring's last book, he talked about the benign virus. And that's all about when you read a book about near-death experiences, if it's been written well, the energy of that near-death experience is still in the page.
Yes.
So as you read it, you can absorb it. If you're at all sensitive, you get what those people were going through as you read it,
right.
Unless it's been edited to death, which sometimes happens. But perfect. It's just so, the more you read about near-death experiences, the more sensitive you are to those vibrations. Perfect. And hence, over the long term, you start to take on the after effects of having had a near-death experience, even though you haven't. Right. So we can go that way. Or you can just attend my workshop and then, it takes a week and you're done.
Well, the idea is that we want to evolve as many people without all the pain. That's really what it comes down to, is that we want a kinder, more loving world, and our future is pointed that way. And the best way to do that is to be inspired with all of the different ways that you can co-create with your heart. And that's what we're doing.
Let's do more of that. Let's co-create with our heart.
Of course. That's what we're doing, isn't it?
It is.
That's what I'm doing here. That's what you're doing here. So, well, thank you, Scott. So I'm sure I'll get to see you on the screen. And someday, again, it will be in person next year in Salt Lake City. So you'll have to.
Let's hope it's not a Lambda variant, all right.
You'll just have to dig out your kilt again.
I love that.
Okay, well, we're over time, so we're gonna have to go. But thank you so much. This was a delight, and I'm serious. I have lots more to talk to you about. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Let's
Yeah,
make a date.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Uh huh.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.